all this means is it stops moving. When you get to the top, every single ball of every single type will always stop moving. There's no difference. Now, if gravity is the only thing acting on it, then you can also assume that, I'm not going to say the exact same spacing can be used, but the same pattern of spacing can be used. Okay? So what I mean by that is everything that we've already done basically would apply. So the whole 25% rule will still apply. And everything will slow down based on that same ratio. Right? So if we mark these, we know that it will take, again, if it's 6 frames to go down there, the whole height, this will take 3 frames, and this will take 3 frames. Okay, every single object will follow that basic rule. And then in terms of the spacing for the rest of it, you just have to decide, well, how many frames do I want it to take? You can keep dividing this and into however many frames you want, and then break up the rest of it too. You just have to decide on the pattern, but the basic pattern is this kind of idea, that the closer we get to the resting point, the smaller the divisions get. That's all. Does that answer the question?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, cool. Opposed to that, it seems to me that all differences between material, weight, density, flexibility comes into play only on the moments of impact. Otherwise, it's only mass and gravity, which affects everything equally. Is this an okay thought? And I believe we answered that. Yeah, that's basically the idea. It's gravity is the main force, and everything else, like you said, after the moment of impact, a certain amount of energy is lost, and that's when we bring in those other charts that we've already talked about ad nauseum. Okay, so we're not going to talk about those again, but that's when these come back into play. Just confirming, this law of 25% is not valid if the ball is thrown down with some force, right? Yes, that is true. If you are throwing a ball down, then you are adding force to it, and all bets are off. Okay. There is something called terminal velocity, but it depends on how high up you are and how fast an object will be going. So the idea behind terminal velocity is if you're dropped from a high enough height, eventually you will reach a speed that you simply won't go any faster. You will stop accelerating. I don't know the physics behind that. Or at least I don't remember them anymore. The bouncing chart was calculated based on the same surface for all balls, right? Is it possible that this surface favors the bounciness of one kind of ball, but another surface might favor others instead? Or we can always count that a basketball is going to bounce more than a table tennis ball. So the combination between ball and surface type can affect the bounciness in a nonlinear way. I think I understand that question. And I think it kind of goes back to this example here. If we threw a different type of ball into this example, if we said, okay, now we have a tennis ball, now we have a tennis ball, and now we have a tennis ball. What we see is that the inherent qualities of the ball is only one factor in determining the bounce. The tennis ball is more bouncy than the bowling ball. That remains true regardless of which surface it's on, right? So the fact that the tennis ball hits the cement along with the bowling ball hitting the cement, the bowling ball will probably still bounce higher. I'm sorry, the tennis ball will probably bounce higher than the bowling ball if it's dropped from the same height. Okay. Now there may be one instance where that might be different. It's this whole steel ball bearing thing. Because if you drop the steel ball bearing on the grass, I could see that, pretty much sticking into the ground just like a bowling ball would. But if you drop that steel ball bearing in the bowling ball on the steel plate, I'll bet the ball bearing obviously would bounce super high, and the bowling ball probably would not bounce, as high. So that might be one instance where there would be a difference. Can anybody think of any difference or any instance where this might prove different? Trying to think of another circumstance. I think largely you can think that as long as you take the balls and they're bouncing on the same surface, then I would just consider the qualities of the individual balls when trying to determine which one is bouncier. You know what I mean? So if you say the tennis ball is bouncier than the bowling ball, then if they're landing on the same surface, that's going to remain true.
Okay.
Okay? If you dropped a bowling ball and a tennis ball in water, bowling ball's going to sink to the ground. Tennis ball will float. So maybe that's a different surface, but okay. I couldn't find a decent bowling ball reference, so I'm just working with 30% for now. Do you know a good place where we can find reference for animators? YouTube is great, but your chances are you probably already looked there. There's a place called Rhino House, which is something that you actually, I think you can get a discounted subscription to it as a student of iAnimate, because I think some of our students actually run that website. So there's a place called Rhino House, RHINO house.com, and they have all sorts of video reference that you guys can study. Sorry, rhinohouse.com. So definitely check them out. I think there was an email that went out when you guys all started encouraging you to check this place out. So if there wasn't, then there might be a link. I'm not sure where they put the link on our website, but I think there's a link to it as well that you can find.